Hello all, a Knife Tale here, and I'm bringing you another knife review, and today we're going to be looking at the Herman Mantis. This is an extremely premium knife, and it is, I believe, what would be considered a custom CNC made knife. These are, just getting it out of the way, expensive, but really, really, really nice. So, what are we looking at? We're looking at this slightly off-gray blue-ish, maybe like slate titanium handle. We're looking at a blade, an M390, with an inset liner lock, with excellent action and amazing acoustics. Let's see. I don't know if you're going to pick this up on the camera, but these knives sing. I think it's something to do with... I honestly don't know why they sing. But they all seem to do it. From what I've heard in my experience, they all seem to do it. Which is pretty cool. Let's jump into specs real fast. For the Sting, you've got a 3 3/4 inch blade. 3.75, you got an 8 5/8 overall, and you got 4 7/8 on the handle. I just like doing that. Quick comparisons. Not that this knife really can be compared to these fairly, but small knife comparison, Civivi Elementum, and full knife comparison, Civivi Conspirator. And as you can see, this is a considerably larger knife. The blade length is bigger. This is right on the edge, for me, of between a full size and a large carry. The cutoff is pretty much that 3.75 inch blade is maybe falling just within, or yeah, probably just within the full size, so I'll still call it a full size, but it's right on the edge of being a large knife. And you can see it, it's much larger than either. It is also, well, we'll get to that in a moment, but it is reasonably tall. It's about the same height as the Conspirator. What I was going to say earlier is it's a little bit of a thicker knife. Actually, it's probably about the same as the Conspirator, but this knife is fully contoured. So, let's see how thick it is real fast. I'm curious. It is actually a tiny bit thinner than the Conspirator at 496 thousandths, so it's just about half an inch. The blade stock is 135 thousandths, probably, is what I'll call that. Let's just double check that. Yeah, okay. Behind the edge is going to be a pain in the butt because, as you can see, that edge bevel is tiny. I mean, it is tiny. Yeah, this one's going to be difficult. Oh, and there's a dog. 7 thousandths, maybe, behind the edge? This is a freaking laser beam. This thing comes down so thin. And it is just super well ground, and yeah, it is ridiculously thin behind the edge and ridiculously nice in that regard. It is a cutter, which is the best thing, in my opinion, an EDC knife can be. At 4.77 ounces, so it's not an ounce an inch, but you're getting full titanium. It is heavily internally milled, you can kind of see in there. You can also see probably made in Poland because that's where it's made by Bartos? Herman is the maker of the knife, and he's in Poland. And you get these things through Polish custom knives, typically. DLT occasionally has some. Maybe another place or two. I don't know. But yeah, you're not getting the perfect ounce and inch ratio number, but oh well. There's a lot more going on here, and it's certainly not a heavy knife. The hardware on the Herman, I believe, is T6s, yes. I don't like T6s, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure these are probably some of the best T6s you're going to get. They're deeply tooled, and they're pretty great. They also run completely through, so that this is the tail of the screw. They can run completely through to attach and screw into everything together. These are also, as you can see, got little bumps. They protrude just a tiny bit, and I don't know, somehow, for some reason, it makes it almost classier. I don't know why, but it does. The pivot is a proprietary hardware, but it comes with the knife. I think he may have actually moved away from using this proprietary hardware on his knives. I know he made a change once before from another type of shape, I believe. I'm not 100%. No, I think he still uses this, but the tool, you put it in, it works fine. Okay. So that's all for the general specs. So, as you can pretty much see, the deployment is flipper tab only, and, I mean, it doesn't have any jimping, but yeah, that's a great detent. That is an amazing detent, and that action is pretty controlled, but still pretty darn drop shot. The action on these things is amazingly, ridiculously smooth. The quality on these things is amazingly great. I very much so want to have more Herman knives. Let's just put it that way. They are, of course, on bearings. I don't think they're on multi-row bearings even. I think they're just bearings, which is pretty great, or pretty amazing. The lock bar is textured, and there's fantastic access. The plunge grind is, I guess, the only problem you could say with this knife. The plunge grind does hit the edge. I believe he does all of these knives on a fixed angled system. So the edges are pretty darn aggressive and pretty darn good and pretty darn consistent. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of a choil. You can, however, cut in the choil because the stop pin on this knife is way up here. Never gets near the edge, no problem whatsoever. There is very little branding on the blade, just the Herman, and it's laser etched in there, and you can feel it. It's textured. It's one of the only times where I would say just blade branding does not bother me whatsoever. This just sells this knife. It's small enough. I mean, there are a few custom makers that have giant logos on their blades, and I just don't like that. But this not in this case. There is actually a tiny bit of play in this right now. No up and down. None of that. But it does seem like I need to tighten that a tiny bit. It is still centered, and I've had it centered perfectly fine when there wasn't play, but it does seem like there's just this tiny hint. It might actually just be lock bar flex. I'm not even 100% sure. But it is perfectly centered. And as I said, I'm quite 100% positive because I've had this knife open at one point. as I just clipped my desk with a really, really expensive knife. Okay. I have had this knife open, and I've carried and used this knife. So apparently that's backing out just a tiny bit. I will have to put some Loctite in there. The clip is a milled clip. It's not a deep carry clip. It's a bit tight. It doesn't have the best springiness. I mean, the retention's strong, but it's a bit tight. But the real issue that I have with the clip is that this is a little bit pokey. Or I should say it's sharp. In the hand, I mean, you don't feel it. You basically don't even feel the clip. But if you go to shift around on this thing, you can occasionally rub against that tip, and you can notice that it is a bit sharp. So, I don't know, maybe just thin the clip out a little bit to get a little more retention or springiness in the retention, but it still works really well, and there's a flat space under the clip, so you're not getting hung up on this texturing, which is across the entire knife, including the clip, and done excellently. And there's a dog, I don't know if you can hear him, but he is going around in the background going, ah. Apparently he has decided that it is his time, as many, many times before he has just decided to interrupt. So, I'm going to be rubbing a dog's head while I'm doing the rest of this, so pardon me if I get a little distracted. Ergos. Ergos are fantastic. This... Really? Okay, dog. This is also a little bit pokey on this model. But my hand fits in there. Even a slightly larger hand is definitely going to fit in there, no problem. I have more than enough handle here. So unless you're landing on it, I don't think it's going to be a problem. And even if you're landing on it, unless you're landing directly on it, it's not a problem. But it could be a pokey for some people. There are other models that Herman does with different handle shapes, so just take that into consideration. But the Ergos are great. It's clearly contoured. The clip almost disappears, despite it just being a decent sized clip. It just feels like it's one with the rest of the knife. And yeah, this thing wants to go. I don't recollect what the specific heat treat on this one was, but I think it was the average. They're pretty well heat treated. I think 62 to 63 is where a lot of Hermans end up on for his M390. He does do the heat treat, so it's probably better quality and tempered better, and just it's going to perform really well, and this geometry is just absolutely insane. There's no doubt about that. So the elephant in the room is the price point on this thing. This is basically a full custom. I mean, he's got patterns for knives, but it's basically a full CNC custom, and as such, it's also coming out of Poland, and this is $800. That's an expensive knife. This is probably but you can feel the quality and the precision, and yeah, these things are just kind of on a different level. They do belong in this tier. These are some of the best knives you're going to get for that $800 price point. I mean, it's 100% every bit comparable to Shirogorals that are more expensive. It is just about as good as something like a Koenig Arius, though I think I do like the Arius a little bit more, and that's USA made, but Herman knives are fantastic. I have two. I intend to get more if I can ever get my finances back into control. This year has not been great for that, but it's an amazing knife. It's a beautiful knife. It's just, this one is just very plain, very simple, straightforward, but just absolutely meticulous. They're basically perfect. And they're pretty consistently basically perfect from what I've heard. And I just put it into my table again. I'm determined to not make it perfect by the end of this review. Yeah. Okay. So the Herman Mantis is not going to be for everyone. Is extremely pricey, and I'm not going to call it a recommendable knife in the sense of, yeah, you need to go out and get this. But if you're looking at price knives in this tier and you want something really high quality, this is definitely needs to be on the list. Herman knives need to be on that list. The only thing, the downside is, if you get one of these more plain variants of this knife very, very much wants to be used. Like, this knife is very tempting. I carry this knife because I got it and I'm like, oh, wow, it's amazing and awesome and I love it, but I want to use this because it doesn't look super fancy and it performs so well. So, I guess that's your downside. It's so nice that you want to carry it more than you might think you're going to want to carry this expensive of a knife. Maybe that's a downside. I don't know. But I'm going to go see what my dog has to say, aside from, and I'm going to wrap things up here just saying that can't put them in the Herman knives in recommended because they're just outside the price range of reasonable recommended. Everybody should get one knife, but yeah, they're great. They're phenomenal. Highly, highly recommend taking the chance to experience one if you can. They're different. And dog's back. So, okay, I'm going to wrap up here. Thanks for putting up with the dog. I'm trying. And thanks for taking a look at this knife. If you've stuck around, I greatly appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment. What are your thoughts on knives? What are your thoughts on knives in this category? I know some people just basically straight up write them off, and I do not blame them. But as a knife enthusiast and collector and user and someone who just gets joy out of knives, I'm very glad to have it. And this feels like it supports its price tag better than a lot of other knives. So, yeah. That's all for me. Bye for now. Thanks for watching.